If your life feels unusually heavy right now, if your patience is being tested in ways it never has before, and if it feels like the universe is pushing you to your emotional edge, understand this clearly. This is not a coincidence, and it is not punishment. Right before a quantum jump, the universe applies pressure in very specific ways. It removes certainty, it delays answers, and it challenges your emotional stability because transformation does not happen in comfort. Most people misinterpret this phase and give up right before everything changes, but those who understand what is happening remain steady and step into a completely new timeline. If you feel like everything is being tested at once, this is because the jump is closer than you think. 1. Your current life starts to feel unstable and misaligned. One of the clearest signs that a quantum jump is approaching is when your current life begins to feel unstable in a quiet but persistent way, even though nothing appears obviously broken from the outside. You may still be waking up at the same time, going through the same routines, speaking to the same people, and pursuing the same responsibilities, yet internally, something feels off. There is a growing sense that you no longer belong in the version of life you are living, and this feeling can be deeply confusing because you cannot point to a single reason why. The mind looks for logical explanations, but the discomfort does not come from logic. It comes from misalignment. The goals that once pushed you forward now feel hollow. The habits that once felt productive now feel heavy, and the environments you once adapted to begin to drain your energy instead of nourishing it. This does not mean you are ungrateful or lazy, and it does not mean you are failing. It means your inner frequency is changing faster than your external reality, and the gap between the two creates tension. As this misalignment grows, you may start questioning things you never questioned before, such as why you are doing what you are doing, who you are doing it for, and whether the path you are on truly reflects who you are becoming. You may feel restless without knowing what you want instead, which can be one of the most uncomfortable emotional states because it removes certainty without offering clarity. This phase often brings self-doubt, frustration, and even guilt, because part of you feels like you should be satisfied while another part knows, very deeply, that staying where you are would slowly drain your spirit. The universe allows this discomfort to rise because comfort is the strongest anchor to an old timeline. If you were fully content, you would never move, and growth would stop. So the universe does not destroy your life, it simply makes it feel too small for you. This instability is not chaos, and it is not punishment. It is recalibration. When your awareness expands and your internal frequency rises, the structures that once supported you begin to feel restrictive because they were designed for an older version of you. Your nervous system senses this before your mind understands it, which is why the discomfort feels emotional rather than logical. You may feel irritated by things that never bothered you before, sensitive to energy you once ignored, and exhausted by interactions that no longer align with your values. This is not you becoming weaker, it is you becoming more aware. The universe is slowly loosening your attachment to a reality that cannot hold the next version of you, because a quantum jump requires space. Old identities must soften, old expectations must dissolve, and old definitions of success must lose their grip. The internal friction you feel during this phase is intentional. The universe cannot move you forward while you are still emotionally comfortable where you are. So it creates a subtle but persistent pressure that pushes you to question your life from the inside out. This pressure is not meant to rush you, but to wake you up. It forces you to confront the truth that what once felt normal is no longer aligned, and that staying out of fear or habit would eventually cost you your peace. This stage often feels lonely because the transformation is internal, and others may not understand why you feel the way you do. But this loneliness is temporary, and it serves a purpose. It creates independence from external validation and prepares you to step into a new timeline without dragging the weight of the old one behind you. This instability is the universe whispering again and again that you are outgrowing your current reality and that the discomfort you feel is not a sign to stop, but a sign that movement is inevitable. 2. The universe tests your patience through delay and silence. Another powerful sign that a quantum jump is approaching is when progress suddenly slows down or appears to stop completely, even though you feel like you are doing everything right. You may be putting in effort, staying disciplined, and remaining intentional, yet the results you expected do not arrive. Messages are delayed, opportunities pause, plans remain unresolved, and clarity feels distant. This phase is especially difficult because the human mind is conditioned to expect movement as proof of alignment. When nothing seems to be happening, doubt begins to grow, and the mind starts questioning whether the universe has forgotten you or whether you made the wrong choices. However, this silence is not abandonment, and it is not rejection. It is one of the most important tests the universe applies right before a major shift. The universe uses delay and silence to test your patience, emotional discipline, and trust. When everything is moving smoothly, alignment is easy, but when there are no visible signs, no reassurance, and no immediate feedback, your true state of belief is revealed. This is the moment when many people panic and attempt to force outcomes by chasing validation, lowering their standards, or returning to old patterns that feel familiar but no longer serve them. The universe observes this response closely because forcing is rooted in fear, while alignment is rooted in trust. If you can remain calm, centered, and grounded during this silence, you demonstrate readiness for a higher level of responsibility and awareness. Silence is also necessary because a quantum jump requires energetic consolidation. Just as the body needs rest before a physical breakthrough, the mind and nervous system need stillness before a major shift in reality. During this phase, the universe is rearranging circumstances behind the scenes in ways you cannot see yet. Timelines are adjusting, connections are shifting, and outcomes are being prepared, but none of this is visible from the surface. The delay exists to prevent premature movement, because stepping forward too early would place you in a reality that does not fully match your new frequency. The universe delays not to deny you, but to protect you from entering something before you are fully aligned with it. This stage often feels emotionally uncomfortable because it removes certainty. You are asked to continue believing without proof, to stay disciplined without reward, and to remain aligned without validation. The ego struggles here because it wants control, timelines, and guarantees, but the universe intentionally withholds these to strengthen your internal stability. When you learn to remain steady in silence, you stop relying on external circumstances to regulate your emotional state. This builds a level of inner authority that is required for the next phase of your journey. You are no longer driven by impatience or fear of missing out, but by a deep sense of trust in the process itself. If you can stay grounded during this delay, if you can resist the urge to force movement, and if you can remain emotionally aligned even when nothing appears to be happening, you pass one of the most important tests before a quantum jump. The silence eventually breaks, but when it does, reality moves quickly and decisively. Doors open without effort, clarity returns suddenly, and progress accelerates in ways that feel almost effortless. This is why patience is tested so intensely right before transformation, because those who learn to trust the silence are the ones who are ready to receive what comes next. 3. Old people, habits, and patterns resurface to test your commitment. Right before a quantum jump, the universe often brings the past back into your life in subtle and emotionally complex ways. Old people you thought you had moved on from may suddenly reappear. Familiar habits you believed you outgrew may begin to tempt you again, and patterns you worked hard to break may quietly resurface. This does not happen by accident, and it does not mean you are moving backward. It happens because the universe is testing your commitment to growth. It wants to see whether you will choose comfort or alignment, familiarity or evolution, and security or truth. The past returns not to trap you, but to measure how strongly you are rooted in the person you are becoming. These moments are especially challenging because they rarely arrive as obvious danger. They often come disguised as nostalgia, comfort, or unfinished emotional business. You may find yourself remembering how things used to be, wondering if you were too harsh, or questioning whether the old ways were really that bad. The mind is very skilled at rewriting history when it feels uncertain about the future. The universe uses this uncertainty to test whether you will protect the progress you have made or surrender it for temporary emotional relief. Growth requires the ability to say no to what once felt safe, even when the new path has not fully revealed itself yet. Old habits often resurface during this phase because habits are energetic shortcuts. When the mind feels uncomfortable or uncertain, it naturally reaches for what it knows. The universe allows this temptation to arise so you can consciously choose differently. Each time you resist returning to an old pattern, you strengthen your new identity. Each time you maintain your boundaries instead of explaining yourself or seeking validation, you signal readiness for the next timeline. This stage is not about perfection, but about awareness. It is about recognizing the pull of the past and choosing alignment anyway. Old relationships resurface for a similar reason. People from previous chapters may appear to test whether you have truly learned the lessons they were meant to teach you. The universe observes how you respond, not in words, but in energy. Do you shrink to be understood, or do you remain grounded in who you are now? Do you reopen doors out of guilt or loneliness, or do you honor the growth that required those doors to close in the first place? These moments reveal whether your boundaries are temporary or integrated into your identity. Passing this test does not always mean confrontation or rejection. Sometimes it simply means clarity. You may interact differently, respond with emotional neutrality, or feel a quiet detachment where strong emotions once existed. This emotional neutrality is a sign that the old timeline no longer has power over you. When the universe sees that the past can no longer pull you out of alignment, it releases you from it permanently. This is one of the final confirmations that you are ready to move forward, because you are no longer being dragged by who you used to be. You are choosing who you are becoming, even when the past tries to remind you of itself. 4. Emotional pressure increases as your awareness expands. As a quantum jump approaches, many people notice that their emotional world becomes more intense and more sensitive than before. Situations that once felt manageable may suddenly feel overwhelming, and small disruptions may trigger deeper emotional responses than you expect. This can be confusing because you may feel like you are becoming weaker or less stable, but in reality the opposite is happening. Your awareness is expanding, and with that expansion comes heightened sensitivity. You are no longer operating on autopilot. You are beginning to feel things more clearly, more honestly, and more deeply, and this increased awareness can feel like pressure before it feels like clarity. During this phase, your tolerance for misalignment drops significantly. Conversations that lack depth may feel draining, environments that are chaotic or negative may exhaust you, and situations that require you to suppress your truth may create emotional discomfort. This happens because your internal frequency is shifting and your nervous system is recalibrating to operate at a higher level of awareness. What once went unnoticed now feels heavy, not because it suddenly became worse, but because you are no longer disconnected from your inner signals. The emotional pressure you feel is the result of your system learning to process information more accurately rather than filtering it out. This stage can also bring emotional waves that seem to come without clear reason. You may feel moments of sadness, frustration, or restlessness, followed by moments of deep calm or insight. These fluctuations are part of the adjustment process. Just as the body experiences soreness when adapting to a new level of physical demand, the mind and emotions experience pressure when adapting to a higher level of awareness. The universe allows this discomfort because it is strengthening your emotional intelligence. You are learning to sit with emotions without being controlled by them, to observe without reacting, and to respond with clarity instead of impulse. As awareness expands, you may also become more sensitive to energy and intention. You may notice dishonesty more quickly, feel when situations are not aligned, and sense when something is no longer meant for you. This heightened perception can feel isolating at first, because you may no longer resonate with environments or people that once felt familiar. However, this is not loss, it is refinement. The universe is sharpening your inner compass so that when the new timeline opens, you will be able to navigate it with discernment rather than confusion. The emotional pressure you experience during this phase is not meant to overwhelm you, but to prepare you. It teaches you emotional regulation, self-trust, and inner stability. When you learn to remain grounded despite heightened sensitivity, you gain access to deeper intuition and clarity. This is one of the most important preparations before a quantum jump, because a higher level of reality requires a stronger emotional foundation. Once this recalibration stabilizes, what once felt like pressure transforms into calm confidence, and emotional awareness becomes one of your greatest strengths instead of a source of discomfort. 5. You are forced to let go without being shown what comes next. One of the most difficult and misunderstood tests that appears right before a quantum jump is the experience of being forced to let go without being given a clear picture of what will replace what you are releasing. The universe often removes certainty before it provides direction, and this creates a deep sense of discomfort because the human mind is wired to seek security, plans, and guarantees. You may find yourself losing interest in certain paths, relationships, or identities without having a new one fully formed yet. This can feel like standing in the middle of nowhere, where the old no longer fits, but the new has not yet arrived. Many people mistake this phase as being lost, but in reality, it is a necessary stage of transformation. The universe cannot introduce you to a new timeline while you are still holding tightly to the old one. If clarity arrived first, you would only choose change from logic, not alignment. That is why the universe asks for release before revelation. It wants to see whether you can trust the process without needing to understand every detail. This phase strips away false security and forces you to rely on inner stability instead of external certainty. You may feel anxious, uncertain, or even afraid, not because something is wrong, but because the mind no longer has familiar structures to lean on. During this stage, you are learning to surrender control without becoming passive. Letting go does not mean giving up or stopping effort. It means releasing emotional attachment to outcomes you can no longer force. The universe is teaching you that some doors must close completely before others can open fully. If you keep one foot in the past out of fear, you cannot step fully into what is ahead. This is why this stage often feels like a void, a space where identity dissolves and the future feels unclear. It is uncomfortable, but it is also sacred, because it is where transformation actually begins. This test also exposes how much you rely on external validation and reassurance. Without a clear next step, you may feel the urge to seek approval, guidance, or confirmation from others. The universe allows this discomfort so you can develop self-trust. When you learn to remain calm without knowing what comes next, you build a level of inner strength that cannot be shaken by uncertainty. This strength is essential for the next phase of your journey because higher timelines require independence from fear-based decision-making. Letting go without clarity also teaches you patience with the unknown. You begin to understand that not everything unfolds according to human timing, and that forcing clarity often delays alignment. As you sit with uncertainty, something subtle shifts inside you. Your attachment to outcomes weakens, your trust in the process deepens, and your emotional reactions soften. This internal shift is the real purpose of this stage. Once you release the need to know, the universe gains space to move. When that space is created, clarity does not arrive gradually. It arrives suddenly, decisively, and often in ways you could not have predicted. This is why this phase feels so challenging, because it requires faith without evidence and courage without certainty. But it is also why it precedes the biggest quantum jumps. The moment you fully let go, without resistance and without fear, the universe recognizes your readiness. What follows is not confusion, but alignment, and what once felt like emptiness becomes the doorway to a completely new reality. 6. The universe challenges your need to control everything. As you move closer to a quantum jump, one of the most powerful tests you will face is the challenge to your need for control. Situations that you once managed easily may begin to resist your efforts. Plans may stop responding to force, and the harder you try to make things happen, the more stuck everything seems to become. This can feel frustrating and confusing, especially if you are someone who is disciplined, responsible, and used to creating results through effort. However, this resistance is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is the universe teaching you a deeper lesson about the difference between control and alignment. Control is often rooted in fear, even when it looks like responsibility or ambition on the surface. It comes from the belief that if you do not manage every detail, everything will fall apart. The universe challenges this belief by placing you in situations where force no longer works. You may notice that conversations go nowhere, opportunities stall, and outcomes refuse to be rushed. This is intentional. The universe is showing you that the next phase of your life cannot be built using the same level of control that shaped the previous one. A higher timeline requires trust, flexibility, and the ability to respond rather than react. During this stage, you are asked to release the urge to micromanage outcomes and instead focus on maintaining your internal state. The universe begins to respond more to your energy than your effort. When you are calm, things move more smoothly. When you are anxious and desperate, resistance increases. This contrast teaches you that your emotional state is not separate from your reality. The more you try to force life into your expectations, the more life pushes back. But when you loosen your grip and remain grounded, situations begin to rearrange themselves in your favor. Letting go of control does not mean becoming passive or careless. It means trusting that you do not have to fight reality to shape it. You begin to act with clarity rather than urgency, and you learn to wait without frustration. This shift is difficult at first because the ego equates control with safety. But as you release this belief, you gain something far more powerful than control, which is alignment. Alignment allows things to unfold with less resistance and greater precision, often delivering outcomes that are better than anything you could have planned. As this lesson deepens, you may notice moments where things work out effortlessly after you stop trying so hard. Conversations resolve on their own, opportunities appear unexpectedly, and solutions arise without force. These moments are not coincidences. They are feedback from the universe showing you that surrender creates flow. The universe is training you to trust the intelligence of life itself, because the next phase of your journey requires cooperation with forces larger than your conscious mind. By the time you pass this test, your relationship with control changes completely. You no longer need to dominate situations to feel secure. You understand that calm presence is more effective than anxious effort. This internal shift signals readiness for a quantum jump, because a new timeline cannot be accessed through force. It can only be entered through alignment. When you stop trying to control everything, you allow reality to meet you halfway, and that is when movement returns faster and more powerfully than before. 7. A deep internal shift happens before your external reality changes. The final and most important sign that a quantum jump is about to happen is a deep internal shift that occurs quietly, often without drama or obvious external confirmation. After all the pressure, uncertainty, emotional testing, and forced letting go, something inside you begins to settle. You may notice a strange sense of calm replacing anxiety, even though your external situation has not fully changed yet. This calm does not come from having answers or certainty, but from an inner acceptance that whatever unfolds next will be handled. This is not resignation, and it is not indifference. It is inner stability. When this shift happens, you stop emotionally chasing outcomes, and instead you carry a quiet confidence that things are aligning in ways you do not need to control. During this phase, your attachment to results weakens significantly. You still care, you still act, and you still move forward, but the desperation is gone. You no longer feel the need to constantly check for signs, overthink every decision, or seek reassurance from people or circumstances. There is a growing sense that your role is simply to remain aligned and present, and that the universe will handle the timing. This internal neutrality is a powerful indicator of readiness, because reality mirrors your inner state. When you stop vibrating with fear, impatience, or doubt, the external world has nothing to reflect back except movement and opportunity. This internal shift often changes the way you perceive your past. Old disappointments no longer carry emotional weight, and previous failures lose their power to define you. You may look back and realize that everything you once resisted or questioned played a role in shaping your awareness. This does not mean you approve of everything that happened, but it means you no longer fight it emotionally. Acceptance replaces resistance, and acceptance creates space. That space is what allows a new timeline to enter. The universe responds to this openness by reorganizing your external circumstances in ways that feel natural rather than forced. As this shift stabilizes, you may feel a quiet knowing that something is about to change, even if you cannot explain why. There is less urgency and more clarity, less fear and more presence. You begin to trust yourself more deeply, not because you know what will happen, but because you trust how you will respond to whatever happens. This level of self-trust is essential for the next phase of your journey because a higher timeline demands emotional maturity, adaptability, and calm awareness. The universe does not move you forward until you are internally prepared to hold what is coming without collapsing under pressure. Once this internal shift is complete, external movement follows quickly. Opportunities align, decisions become clear, and momentum returns with surprising speed. What once felt blocked begins to flow, and what once required effort now unfolds with ease. This is not luck, and it is not coincidence. It is the natural response of reality to a stabilized internal state. The universe always changes you before it changes your circumstances, because transformation begins within. When you reach this stage, the tests end, resistance dissolves, and the quantum jump becomes inevitable. You are no longer waiting for change. You have become the version of yourself that can receive it. 8. The quantum jump arrives quietly, then changes everything at once. When the universe finally decides that you are ready, the quantum jump does not arrive with warning, noise, or dramatic build-up. It arrives quietly, often at a moment when you are no longer desperately waiting for it. This is because by the time the jump happens, you are no longer the same person who began the journey. Your emotional state has stabilized, your attachment to outcomes has loosened, and your trust in the process has deepened. The universe waits for this internal readiness because a new timeline cannot be sustained by an old mindset. Once you reach this point, reality no longer needs to test you, it begins to respond. The change often starts subtly. A conversation shifts unexpectedly, an opportunity appears without effort, or a decision becomes suddenly clear after weeks or months of confusion. These moments may seem small at first, but they carry momentum. Once the movement begins, it accelerates quickly. What once felt blocked begins to flow, what once felt distant becomes accessible, and what once required struggle unfolds with surprising ease. This is the nature of a quantum jump. It is not gradual improvement. It is a rapid reorganization of circumstances that aligns with the internal changes you have already made. What makes this stage powerful is that you no longer chase the outcome. You meet it. You respond instead of react. You act from clarity instead of fear. Because of this, the new timeline feels stable rather than overwhelming. You do not feel the need to prove yourself or rush your progress. You understand that what has arrived did so because you were prepared to hold it. The universe rewards readiness, not desire. Desire alone creates longing, but readiness creates arrival. During this phase, you may reflect on the pressure, silence, confusion, and emotional testing you experienced earlier and realize that none of it was wasted. Every delay strengthened your patience, every letting go deepened your trust, and every moment of discomfort refined your awareness. The universe was not slowing you down, it was reshaping you. The reason the jump feels sudden is because the work was done internally, long before the external shift became visible. This new timeline does not mean life becomes perfect or free of challenges. It means challenges are different. They no longer feel threatening to your identity or stability. You face them with confidence, presence, and emotional resilience. You trust yourself more deeply, and that trust becomes your foundation. The universe does not remove difficulty, it upgrades your capacity to move through it without losing yourself. When the quantum jump arrives, you understand something that only experience can teach. You realize that the tests were never meant to stop you. They were meant to prepare you. You were not being delayed. You were being aligned. And the moment you stopped resisting the process began working in your favor. This is the moment where everything makes sense, not because every question is answered, but because you finally trust the unfolding. The jump does not announce itself. It reveals itself through movement, clarity, and calm certainty. And once it begins, there is no return to the old timeline because you no longer resonate with who you used to be. You did not escape your old life. You outgrew it. And that is why the universe opened the door when it did. If you are experiencing pressure, emotional heaviness, silence, confusion, and the feeling that your old life no longer fits you, understand this clearly and without doubt. Nothing has gone wrong. You are not being punished, delayed, or forgotten. You are standing at the edge of a major transformation, and the universe always applies its greatest tests right before a quantum jump. Every moment of discomfort you felt was not meant to break you, but to prepare you. Every delay strengthened your patience. Every moment of silence taught you trust, and every letting go reshaped you into someone capable of holding a higher level of reality. The universe does not change your circumstances first, it changes you first. It removes what no longer aligns, challenges your need for control, and forces you to trust yourself without guarantees. It allows confusion so clarity can arrive clean and stable. It creates emotional pressure so awareness can expand. And it asks you to release the past before it introduces the future. None of this happens randomly. Each stage is intentional, precise, and deeply intelligent. What you may not realize yet is that the hardest part is already behind you. The internal shifts have happened. The attachments have weakened. The old timeline has lost its grip. You may not see immediate evidence yet, but alignment always comes before manifestation. The universe responds to who you have become, not to what you hope for, and the person you are now is calmer, stronger, more aware, and far more grounded than before. Stay present, stay disciplined, stay aligned. Do not rush what is already moving. Do not force what is already unfolding. Trust that what is meant for you is reorganizing itself to meet you at the right moment. The universe never opens a door until you are ready to walk through it without fear. The jump is coming, not because you asked for it, but because you became ready for it.